I got a theory. Is the word Akata a mystery? Do we really know the history? I'm Nigerian, born in America, so this is 5 minutes with an Akata.
Oh yeah, my people, black people, good people, all peoples. In today's quest to learn more about the word Akata, I speak with Mr. Justin Jones-Fosu. He is a founder and CEO at Work Meaningful. He's also an author of The Inclusion Mindset and Your Why Matters Now. He's also an award-winning entrepreneur and business consultant. We only got 5 minutes. Actually, this is season 4. We got a little more time. Oh yeah, let's get into this. Mr. Justin, thank you so much for joining me for 5 minutes with Akata.
It's great to be on here.
You're representing the west coast of the motherland, Ghana, Chale.
Hey, Chale, we are here.
Yes. So have you ever heard of the word Akata before?
I had not actually heard of it before being sought after the interview, and then I started looking it up, and so I was like, oh, this seems pretty cool. And so I want to bounce it back to you. And what does your heart tell you? I want you to give us a definition that you've never ever shared that Akata means to you.
So a definition that I've not shared before is that when I was speaking, I think it was in Clubhouse, and we heard someone in Nigeria said that, actually I think it was Iyori interviewing someone from Nigeria while she was in Nigeria, and the person said that it was used in a positive way. And that was a first, because in my experience, it had always been, used to either identify someone who was African American who did not have any direct lineage or link Africa, like they didn't grow up in Africa or have any family members in Africa. Or it was used in a negative connotation to make it seem like, oh, that Akata, like in a bad way. So when I heard that it was used in a positive way, I was like, okay, that's good. It's different. So what was your experience when you heard the word?
I Googled it. I was like, oh, African American. And I know there's just been, I saw that there was some negativity initially associated with it, like what you mentioned. And I was like, I feel like I'm the best version of Akata, because like my dad is born and raised in Ghana, and my mom is from Maryland, America. And so I'm African American. So I'm the best representation of Akata.
Oh, wow. Yes, you are. So growing up, it's good that your parents are both Ghana and America. So you kind of like probably seen the best of both worlds. Do you think that there's a lack of unity between Africans and African Americans?
Yeah, I think there used to be. It's changing, right? I have great conversations every time I go back to Ghana, which is like twice a year now, and with cousins and family members. And I noticed something powerful that Africans, and it's very similar to Caribbeans and other people and some of the islands, is that they have a privilege of identity. And I didn't realize this until I was at my son's preschool event, and they had a parade, right? And they were doing like this cultural parade, and where clothes from you're from. So I hit up my stepmom. I was like, yo, I need some clothes. Can you send them over when auntie's coming over? Put in her luggage, please. And so they sent the clothes over for my son. They even got some for my daughter. And I was really excited there at the parade. I loved it. So you had these kids who are, from Native American and Indian and Korea and all these things. I'm standing next to my friends. I live in Charlotte now. I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. Like, this is awesome. Like, we didn't get a lot of this in Mississippi when I used to live there. So I love to see this here. And my friend who was an African American, he was like, we hate this day. And I'm like, why? He's like, because we don't know where we're from. Just because we're quote unquote somewhere from Africa, we're not just going to throw them on, put some African clothes on them. So like, we had them wear American clothes, right? And that's the first time I realized crystal clear that I had the privilege of identity. Like, when I go back, I can see myself completely, right? I can see the billboards look like us, the leaders look like us, like the politicians look like us. And there's an identity that's there that we don't have to wrestle with. We don't have to question, can I achieve, can I reach this level? Because we've seen that. And even if we grew up first generation, our parents have invested that in us because they have the privilege of identity. So the way they raised us was with this beautiful identity of who we are. But a lot of African Americans don't get that same privilege.
Absolutely. You know what? You're the first person. I've been saying this. I've been calling it African privilege in previous conversations because I never knew how to place it. But I think you have the perfect definition. Is the privilege of identity. And I always used to say people have, when you are of African descent, you kind of have an African privilege because, for example, our parents used to come here, they'll say, oh, if I can come from Africa and I can excel and I can thrive here in America, why can't you as an African American do the same? And I'm like, no. I used to think that way too, but you actually have an African privilege because you didn't have to deal with systemic oppression, all the racism and in Africa you're built up. So you kind of have, you know where you came from. So if anything were to go down, you can go back. But African Americans, where can they say that they can go back to? This is all they've ever known: systemic oppression, racism, and you name it. So that's what I call African privilege. But you've put such a good name to it, the privilege of identity. That's so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to go back to, you said you had to Google the word and it literally just said African American, right?
Well, yeah, it talked a little bit about the negative connotations that have been associated with it from the 1960s and 70s from Nigerians. Because they attribute everything bad to Nigerians, I see. But it was attributed there in the U.S. and they use it as a negative slur. They stated that cotton picker and other things that refer to African Americans. So some of the research I found that talked about them otherizing Native Black Americans, and so it sounds like one of the words that for some it may have been a slur, but it sounds like there's a reclaiming of the word and the power of the word versus what some may have intended it to be in a negative or derogatory term.
Wow, that just reminded me of the N-word here in America. That's crazy. So now, when you grew up, did you come here when you were younger, or were you born here?
So I was born here, and I have a very unique experience, even different than even my Ghanaian friends. So I was born here, born and raised, Michigan, and my parents divorced when I was 4. And so then I lived with my mom, and then I saw my dad less and less. So, my dad, African, true Ghanaian dad is working his butt off, and, the deputy director, goes on to work for the United Nations, used to be an economist, chairperson of the economics department at university, all these things. And then, so I didn't really get a chance to grow up with my dad. And so I never embraced that aspect of who I was growing up because he represented that. And I was sad and disappointed. And it wasn't until my 30s that deep sense of sadness was just washed over me. And I felt like I was missing something, like a deficit. And so in 2019, I was going to take my kids to Ghana for the first time. I'd been several times, and I was going to go confront my dad. And why weren't you in my life? Why didn't you fight for me? Why weren't you there for me? And instead of going to confront my dad, I have a really great therapist. I'm in a great leadership Charlotte cohort that challenged me to go and hear his story. And as I went to go hear his story, I learned so much. Now, I didn't walk away yep, I agree with the outcome, because I still wish he would have fought. But I better understood. And when I chose to forgive my dad for not being active for my life, an overwhelming sense of heritage came over me. I didn't realize that by not forgiving him, I was holding that off. But when I forgave him, it overtook me, and it just did something so powerful to me that I was I want to make a positive impact on this continent. And so I've done things I have a business in Ghana, and we're building schools and clean water projects and taking people to Ghana so they can experience the beauty of the continent through what I believe is a gateway country. And so a lot has happened in forgiving my dad, but that's just kind of reclaiming my heritage came in forgiving him.
Wow, that's amazing. They always say forgiveness is setting yourself free. When you hold on to unforgiveness, it's like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. So I'm glad that you got to go through that healing process, and now you're giving back to the continent. Thank you so much for joining me for 5 minutes with Akata. We have to talk offline because we can talk all day. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much.
Maybe you know the true definition of Akata. If so, let me know. If you like this episode, subscribe, rate, share, and help spread the hope of unity. On Hiyan Zekbe, y'all. I leave you with love, joy, faith, hope. Peace.
LAM.